What is going on, good people? We are live, and I think this is hilarious. I got late. I'm late to my own. How am I late to my own show? How does that happen? I had. I'm just doing the show by myself today, and I'm sitting here thinking about what I'm going to tell everybody on this live show, and then I looked up, and it's already after the time to be on. So, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to Victorious Leadership Live. And some many of you know I was involved with doing a TEDx talk I just did last Saturday. And so rather than having a guest on today, I decided I would talk a little bit about that. That's all right with you all. And I'm also going to then, I figured, hey, I'll interview myself and answer these questions that I've been asking the last four guests that I've had. I just started this at the top of the year. And so, welcome to Victorious Leadership Live. And usually these are candid conversations, as will this one be. And it's usually a GM or an HR leader is who I've been interviewing. If you're interested, drop a comment or DM me if you want to be on the show, because I love talking about this topic on leadership and hearing different perspectives on it. So we're going to do something a little bit different today. So, as I said, over the last several weeks, I've been prepping for this talk. And I got to tell you, getting ready for that, plus doing Victorious Endeavors, coaching, speaking, having conversations with leaders, navigating what's going on out there in the world of hospitality that's impacting our businesses, it's been a lot. It was tough. I wanted to share that with you all. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. So on my show, we don't talk about theory. We talk about the real deal, what's really happening. And I'm going to give you my thoughts coming from my perspective, my experience for this particular episode. So let's start with TEDx first. And as I said, if you want to be on the show, drop a comment. If you got questions along the way, just drop them in there. I will, in fact, let me do that real quick. Let me pull up Facebook, because I don't think all of the comments show up on, I don't think they all show up in my restream here. So let's see, make sure I have that up, make sure I got LinkedIn up so I can see your questions. And YouTube. Let's make sure I got YouTube up as well. And just drop those questions in here, and I should be able to catch either or. All right. So I want to talk about TEDx first. And as I said, that was the toughest thing I have done. I've scraped my knees a number of times in this business. I've fell down a number of times, but this was the toughest. Prior to that, it was getting my SHRM certification. That was the hardest up until now. So why do you say that? First of all, here's the thing about TEDx. You think that you are telling your story, and I certainly did. I wanted to talk about my dad. I wanted to get my dad's story out there, quite frankly, and my family legacy. And I did do that. But you think it is about you or whatever it is that you want to do, but it's really an idea that resonates with everyone, all walks of life. And so it's really more about the idea and how it resonates with everybody than it is about you or your whatever your story is. And so I wanted to make sure that did both, that I was able to get my family legacy out there, but also be able to be something that I thought would be helpful to folks. And I think, well, you all will tell me. It'll be out late June, early July, so you will tell me whether I accomplished that. Um, the what it was about was in. Sure, you all know. I wrote a book, and it's about the presence-driven leader. So this idea is that I got from my family is it's all about presence, not from your position. And many of you know this in leadership. The minute you say, go do this because I'm the director, and I've seen that happen. I remember one hotel I was at where this director of engineering was just going at it with a at your service supervisor, and he was all about I'm the director of engineering, and just it was a train wreck. You just couldn't believe that you're leading with your position. You're already lost when you do that. When you draw a line in the sand and say do this because I'm this, you've already lost. So that's the core idea, is leading with presence, and that matters more. Presence matters more, and you'll make a difference with your team, and you will all win the day when you do that. It's not about authority. We all have a tendency to confuse authority with leadership. So I talk about that. And also, let's just keep it real. The people who create the biggest impact are often not the loudest person, or the particular, the person that has the title, right? And there's nothing like what I said before. When someone is using their title, there's nothing faster that kills your company culture overnight. When you have a leader that's all about their title, that just kills company culture, and it's tough to recover from that, quite frankly, right? So I'll just leave it for now, and then you get ready for when the talk comes out, and you'll be able to see more about it. And by the way, when it gets close to that, I'm going to be looking for some street, my street people to help get the word out on the street and get it pushed out there. So I'm going to need people to watch it from start to finish. I'm going to need people to like it and comment it and get it pushed so that this idea gets further and further out there. Because I can tell you, just it wasn't that many weeks ago where I was in a hotel helping them out because there were leaders that didn't get that and were causing havoc, not only in their department, but across multiple departments. And it's still happening. So we got to get the message out there. The other thing I will tell you, because I always do keep it real, it was brutal. Balancing speaking, content creating, consulting, coaching. Those of you who don't know, I have a coffee brand, Victoria's Coffee. I have that online that I do as well, and then looking for new customers, new clients to coach, new companies to go talk about this is not easy. And when I'm hitting certain points, dropping my knowledge, when I was doing this talk, there was nothing better. You could feel the audience react. When I was hitting certain lines, that was supposed to be a funny moment, you could feel the audience. In that case, you could even hear the audience respond. There was nothing like it. And the other thing was really cool was when the lights came up and I saw Mivita, my wife, Kenya, there. In fact, on top of all that I was doing, right? Coaching, consulting, looking for new business, speaking gigs. My wife and I were celebrating our 10-year wedding anniversary, May 1st. And I had a book signing that I was doing also, May 4th. And on the first, we had a barbecue here at the house. On the second was the dinner. We had people from out of town as well as here in town, here in Orlando. And on top of that, Kenya and I were learning a salsa program that we were going to do. And I was literally like going through my talk as we were going through the different patterns of this salsa thing. It was something else. But we had a great time with that. And back to this evening when I hit the final line, and yes, there were applause, which is certainly wonderful. Yes, don't I love that? Yes, I keep it real. Yeah, that was wonderful. But what was the best thing of all was when the lights came up, and I didn't know this because I didn't want to look for them because I thought it might trip me up if I see my family in the audience, and it was just my wife and my firstborn and his fiance Noelle. So it was just the three of them that made it to this event, and they were in the front row. And when lights came up, I saw them down. I could see the look on their face. And I was like, "Ooh, wow, that was pretty cool. That made it all come together." So that was neat stuff. The other thing I will say, though, we as leaders, we have a tendency to pour into everyone else while neglecting ourselves. And she's in the kitchen. Okay, she's walking away. And so, I'm going to make sure that, let's see, if she's got a 3-day weekend coming up here in June next month, or certainly 4th of July, I'm going to take her somewhere. We're going to, go away and decompress and then pour back into ourselves, because she's been working a lot. I've been working a lot. So leaders, we're always pouring into everybody, but you got to make sure that you take time for yourselves. And so we're going to have a restful 3-day weekend at some point coming up here soon. So as I said, here we go. We're going to go into the next segment. Usually I'm the one asking the questions, but I'm gonna pull up the questions that I usually ask my guests, and I'm going to go through those. Before I do that, I'm going to tell you about my career progression. Now, I'm not going to give you all the specifics. You can go on to my LinkedIn profile and see that, or again, you can drop a question if you want to know something specific. But I'm going to do my career progression, and I think do I see a question already? Oh, okay. So Russell, I see you. Thank you, Russell. I'm getting some applause from Russell. Thank you, sir. Good to see you on here. Thanks for hopping on. So I'm not going to go through my whole career progression. I'm just going to sort of go in phases, all right? Because we don't have time. I've been doing this a very, 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 very long time. So I'm just going to break it up into phases, and as I said, you can go look on LinkedIn if you want to see step by step, or just go ahead and ask me a question. But I started out in hospitality operations. It wasn't always HR. I started out in operations. I worked in almost every hourly frontline position available, from fast food, which is where I started, to restaurants, eventually landing in hotels. And even there, when I got to the hotels, I was still on the front line, washing dishes, gardening, you name it. I was probably there. So needless to say, while I got a great deal of my leadership from Bill, Willie Fate, and Lee F. Simmons, and also getting a Bachelor of Science in Hospitality Management, I learned leadership from the ground level up in hospitality. And I learned quickly that hospitality is people work disguised as operational work. And I got really good at seeing what was coming in terms of pressure, guest expectations, staffing issues, and leadership inconsistency early in my career. I was able to see that coming around the corner. And that was, I would say there were two critical roles that set me up for success in what eventually was my career in human resources and diversity, equity, and inclusion, was being a front desk agent and a convention service manager. And why do you say front desk agent? Well, you have to think on your feet. You have to problem solve. You got to be great. If you're going to be good, if you're going to survive, you got to be great at customer service. And while doing that, while getting your face ripped off. and then being a convention service manager. And in order to pull off a flawless program, first of all, you're the GM for a group. And, I was out at La Quinta Resort and Club, fabulous, fabulous resort, 35 swimming pools. What is it? 25 swimming pools, 35 jacuzzis, something like that. 8 golf courses, 30 tennis courts, 75,000, 50,000 square feet of meeting space, right? When I was there, and you're the GM for these groups that are coming in, and you're getting them from the airport. Back then, these are when these pharma was doing these, or even various industries that were doing, sales programs where they're wining and dining the sales leaders. And so you're picking them up at the airport through buses, limos, what have you, getting them to the resort, and then planning events on and off, doing excursions off site, plus all the meals. Usually there's a couple of meetings, and then these fabulous theme party dinners for 2,000, 3,000 people. That you're making sure everybody's moving in orchestra like a symphony, and you rely on all of the departments to come together to pull all this off, right? Getting them checked into the room, getting them checked in on time, right? And learning how to be able to do that takes emotional intelligence. It takes relationship building. You have to be very strategic. And from doing that as a front desk agent and as a convention service manager, that made me without being braggadocious. I am not being braggadocious. I'm just saying I was good at being an HR leader. And what made it for me, again, what made me great at it was I wasn't the compliance guy. I wasn't the SOP guy. Those are important, and we made sure we got those done. But I wasn't the compliance SOP. I wasn't the employee party person. Although I will say, I remember the first one I did at the Westin Mission Hill. No, the one I did at Westin Mission Hills. I had done some. I was at Rancho Las Palmas as an HRD. But when I was at Mission Hills, I had this great budget there, and I'll never forget. My GM was like, "This is the most outstanding event I've never seen." An event. I did it like I was doing, like it was Honeywell coming in. I had pin spotlights on the tables, these huge florals. Not only did I have a DJ, I had a DJ and a band. Yeah, those were different times back then. Nobody's got budgets like that anymore. My point is that I wasn't just the employee party person. I was a problem solver. I was solution oriented. I remain that way. I was the operational business partner to the entire executive team and the confidant to the executive team. And that's what made the difference from those two roles. So that from an early stage. And then by the time I had moved on, I had worked KSL, then Marriott, then Starwood. Now I'm at Wyndham and starting to get in bigger and bigger roles in HR, and then in corporate roles. And I worked across HR, operations, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, those four scary letters that really make a difference in your culture, by the way. But that's another conversation another day. And it's all about leadership development at this point, organizational culture. And again, I saw firsthand how leadership consistency impacts your turnover, your engagement, and performance. I could see that. And that got me up to Atelier. Did I see another question come in here? Darlene, what is going on? So good to see me. It's good to see you. As Willie Fate, my grandfather would say, it's good to see you. Now that I see you, I'm doing better. So thanks for hopping on. Let's see. Okay, so that takes me up to, let me round the corner and get through career here. We're up to the pandemic. And what do you think happened to me? Yeah, same thing that happened to you. I was not working from home. I was at Wyndham Corporate in March of 2020. I was not working from home. I was not furloughed. I was out on the street. My job was eliminated, gone. but I was one of the lucky ones, and I got on very quickly with Atelier Ace Lifestyle. Tremendous company. Great experience because I hadn't really been in lifestyle. I worked for hotel brands that had them, um, but now I'm talking about culture, employee brand identity, leadership under pressure in a whole different, really a different landscape. Lifestyle brand is different, particularly for this company because even though they may have been around when I got there in 2020, they had been around. I'm guessing now maybe 12 years by the time I got to them. This was the first time corporate HR. They didn't have an HR at the corporate level. They had them at the properties, but they hadn't had that. Too creative. We don't. We're not trying to have some SOPs and some compliance. That's stunting my creativity. I want to be able to, you know, reign free, which we know is not always the best when it comes to labor laws, when it comes to being compliant with certain things, right? And they knew that, and that's why they were looking. They were looking for someone to help them in that regard, and fortunately, it worked out, for me. And so I was quickly onboarded onto Atelier, and we had a great run. So um, we had some great hotel openings. I opened in Kyoto was already underway when I joined, even though the island was shut down by this point. That was a great experience. Ramping that up once the island did open. It was done virtually. I'm still salty, Brad Wilson, that I didn't get a chance to get there. Still salty about that. You can drop a comment, Brad. And then we opened in Brooklyn. Fabulous, wonderful experience. And then got to go up to Toronto. Thank you, Brad. I was staying. I was in New Jersey at this point, so it was a quick shot up from New Jersey up to Toronto. So I got to go there. Thank you. Very appreciative. Great experience. Great team there. Uh, we sued right around that same time. It was a race. Was it going to be Toronto or Sydney that was going to open? Also salty about that. Wasn't able to go to Australia. I'm still salty about that one too, Brad. Um, but a good experience there, different culture. But the one that was the best in terms of complexity, in terms of culture, in terms of language barrier, in terms of labor laws, in terms of budgeting, the most difficult, most challenging was opening in Athens, Greece. Yet the funnest thing I've ever done, and was just and I well yes I did get to go. I did get to go there, um, and really going there is one thing. Yes, that's cool. Long flight, but you're now in Europe, and that is cool by all means. But what was cooler, what was just so much more gratifying is now you're face to face with folks and you're able to get your arms around those folks because you're trying to convey the brand that they had never seen. Ace was, not well, they were in London, but for Athens, they really trying to make sure they really understand that brand. And you want your team members to really get that, right? When we're talking about employee branding, we want them to really understand. It's one thing to say, okay, these are our core values, creativity, inclusion. Yeah, we could say it in Greek so they get it, but really to get them to feel that and really understand that, and what was really important to us that makes Ace different than any, because Ace truly, I know every brand says that they're different than everybody else, but I will say, as someone who's worked for worked for Marriott, worked for Starwood, worked for Wyndham, all had multiple brands within those brands. This one was a brand, Ace, and it was critical for them to really understand that, and that is hard to do over Google Meets or a Zoom call. And so it was yes, Russell, it was the biggest career challenge was taking on that role. And it was first time. It was a first time VP. I was doing two disciplines. That was the other thing that made that role challenging because it is, I try not to get on my soapbox about DEI, but DEI is a entire body of work. It is an entire body of work. And I was doing both disciplines. HR is an entire body of work, right? You go get your certification. There's 7 modules of um, of what makes up the world of HR: talent acquisition, right? Organizational capability, safety, all of those things is HR. Same thing for DEI. There's a whole body of work. Same thing, 6 or 7 of modules that you go through. And I'm running both of those. First time for this, so there's nothing there. So I'm building that from the ground up initially for both of those disciplines. And even though ACE by nature was a very progressive company, they still didn't have the maturity level in terms of how you handle when there are certain things that need to be done from an HR perspective. And there was learning, coaching that needed to be done as you're building this thing. It was literally like what they were saying during the pandemic, where you're building the plane while it's in air. And I was doing that for HR, I was doing that for DEI, and opening these fabulous hotels abroad and with different cultures. And that one was the toughest. So that takes me through career, and yes, that definitely was the I would say the toughest career challenge for me, yet the most gratifying as well. And so where are we at today? Today, I've built what's called Victorious Endeavors, where we're focused on leadership, workplace culture, and my book, The Presence Driven Leader, that just went out early March of this year, and my second book, which is coming out in is it less than 2 weeks? I think we're around 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks here. The Leah Simmons story that comes out on June 9th. And we'll be doing a launch party back in Palm Springs. I launched the Presence Driven Leader, lead with position, lead with presence, not position, in Palm Springs. That's where my family is. That's where a lot of my hotel contacts were. I was out there for 3 decades, and we're going to go back out there because my father, the family's there. And my father had this great career that culminated in a new career. He had a great career in the Air Force, then a new career, civil service, with President Ford, which was in Palm Springs in Rancho Mirage. And so we're going to launch his story, which is a children's book, at the Avalon Hotel and Bungalows on June 10th. So if you're in the Southern California area, be on the lookout. There's a LinkedIn event page, there's a Eventbrite page, there's a Facebook page, or just hit me up. We'll get the link to you. Make your way to that. And I do all of that combining, my speaking, coaching, everything that we've talked about so far in my career is now wrapped up into speaking, coaching, consulting, and thought leadership that I do on LinkedIn. In fact, I just, on top of a fabulous, if I do say so myself, TED Talk, it was a great experience. I also met with Davidson, manages 2 hotels in San Diego. Since I was already in San Diego, my good friend Ariana, who is the complex HRD overseeing those 2 properties, the Margaritaville and the Hilton downtown, I told her I was going to be out there, and would you be interested in, having a conversation with your team around the concept of the presence-driven leader? She said, yeah. We worked it out, and so I spent some time with both of their teams for both properties, came together and had just a great conversation. It was not, when I do my training, I try to be a little bit different than, I hate those things where you go and then you just never, you don't put those things into action. And I like to give you the type of training where it is something that you could use as soon as you leave that room. You could put into effect and make an impact with your team like that. that's what we did, and I think what we accomplished based on the feedback I was getting from both the GMs and the team members that were there. It was a great experience. So thank you. Shout out to Team Margaritaville and Hilton down there in the Gas Lamp in San Diego. Just had a great time with that team there. Um, I'll wrap this up, and I got a couple more. I got probably 4 or 5 questions that I usually ask, but I'll wrap up this segment on my career um, with key career moves for me. I won't go into too much detail, maybe for another show, but the first one was really being able to pivot during uncertain moments. I think I'm good at that, and that happened right out the gate. My first move that I had to make after being at La Quinta Resort, I was there almost 13 years. I had a critical moment when I first started, right when I graduated. There was a moment that we could talk about someday that could have been a career ender, and I prevailed in that situation, which gave me a great opportunity at La Quinta. And then after 13 years, where it seemed like I think I had reached the end of the road, and made a pivot and took a step back. I took a step back to leave La Quinta, and that took me to the JW. So I was director of front office at La Quinta, and I went back to convention services at the JW. But then 3 years later, I was director of HR down the street, Rancho Las Palmas Marriott. So it was a pretty critical moment for me. And then one thing I learned while I was at Rancho Las Palmas, Frank Garahan, shout out to Frank Garahan, who was the GM that hired me at Rancho Las Palmas, told me when I first started, one of the things he told me that stuck with me and I think is part of my success was he said, tell the general manager the truth, whether you think they want to hear it or not. And I got good at speaking up, telling the GMs, hey, hey, now you hurt that person's feelings. Stop it. Knock that off and go over there and apologize to that person and come back and tell me how it went. And GMs that are listening, you all are like, oh, no, the buck stops with me, and they don't want to hear that, right? And but I got good at being able to do that. And I know that it is not easy. I talk to my HRDs all the time when I was area director at Wyndham, and when I was at Ace, like, hey, you gotta get in there and tell them, knock it off, don't do that. And the first reaction is, well, that's my boss. How do I tell my boss that? And it is not easy. It is not easy, but you have to find a way to be able to do that. And when you just do that once, you got to be right. You got to make sure that you are right, that you've looked at all the angles, and that you made sure that this is a situation where the GM is wrong, is dead wrong. Then you got to hit them right between the eyes with, now that's not right, and you need to provide a solution for them. You can't just say that's wrong and then walk out of the office. You got to say that's wrong, and this is what I think you should do. Unless you have a better idea, what's the better idea? Because we got to fix this, and then give them that solution, and then hold them accountable to it. And you know what will happen right after that? They're going to come to you and go, hey, I got this problem. They're going to come to you with a problem. Hey, I got this problem. What do you think I should do about this situation? Right? Or they're going to say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? They now trust you because they know you're giving it to them straight. So that was, I would say, a pivotal moment for me, was being able to speak up even when uncomfortable. The other thing is, listen, y'all, I know that you may find this hard to believe. Those of you just listening to me for the first time, and or folks that know me, I'm a shy person. I'm a shy guy. Believe it or not, I am. And so that is not easy to do. I get it, but you got to. If you're going to be in that role, if you're going to be a leader, you don't have to be a VP of HR. You don't have to be an area director of HR. If you're going to be a leader, you gotta be able to go toe to toe with your boss, and I don't, I'm not being talking about combative. That's the thing. You have to find the way to deliver the message such that they hear you. I say that all the time for people not even in leadership. I've talked to folks that are in frontline positions that are getting themselves into hot water. And listen, everybody wants to be heard, but you got to do it so that people will hear you. So, um, so enough of that. I think we've covered that. Let's go into the first question I ask is leadership origin story. I think you're getting it, but let me see what I had here for leadership origin story. When I think back, the things that shaped me, aside from what I've already told you, it's a great deal of what I've gone through already. But it was truly that. How do leaders impact their environment emotionally? And that was a big thing for me. How people, I've seen where leaders, there's an emotional situation going on and the leader gets involved and makes it even worse. So we got to be mindful of that. And I'd say that I was really good at understanding that. Not always. I told the crew in San Diego 2 days ago, I said, there are times when, I might be upset about something, and you got to make sure your face is correct, your tone of voice is correct. And it is an ongoing thing because, I am very particular about what I want and what I need. And so I know what I want. I know what's going to make the team successful, but you have to make sure that you keep your emotions in check. You have to have a great deal of emotional intelligence. Russell, what's your question? Really, Victor? Which part are you talking about that you're saying really? What don't you believe, Russell Edmond? Russell of Hotels, tell me. Be more specific so I can answer that question. So as I was saying, I saw leaders walk into a room and either create calmness, which is what we want, clarity and confidence, or I've seen them walk into a room and create tension, fear, and confusion, which, in world hospitality, we don't have time for that. We do not have time for that. And what I've learned is leadership presence spreads fast, and people feel it when you walk into a room immediately. Okay, now, okay, Vic's here. We're going to get things accomplished. Vic's here. I better have my stuff together. I better have it together because he's going to have questions. People feel it. And that stayed with me throughout my career. And it's part of the foundation for the presence-driven leader. Oh, Russell, my main man, Russell doesn't believe I'm shy. Yeah, I'm not shy around you, Russell Edmond, who we grew up together from right out of high school. Yeah, I'm not shy around you. I'm going to tell you what I think about certain things, and we have a ball about that. But you put me in a room full of nobody I know at the TED Talk stage from when I was in San Diego. Whew, man, my knees were well, by the time I got up there, that wasn't. But I will tell you, I was just in Tampa the other day in front of probably 20 people. My legs were shaking. I was like, oh, they're going to see how, and I'm usually not that nervous. I've been that nervous before, but usually I'm not that nervous. But I was in Tampa. This is like 2 weeks ago, and my knees were shaking. And that's why I teach presentation skills, and I tell people in presentation skills training, I say, don't get up there and say, oh, I'm nervous. You think you're doing that so people will take it easy on you. People will already take it easy on you because they want you to succeed. People in the audience, they want you to do well. So you don't need to tell them that you're nervous, and they will not. And 9 times out of 10, at the end of it, when you say, oh, I was so nervous, what do people tell you? Oh, you didn't look at it at all. I get that all the time. Well, that day, that I did this in Tampa, like I said, I was like, they got to be seeing this. And that's why I always, as a speaker, this is the other thing. When I'm a speaker, I always ask for a lavalier mic. It's one of those ones like the TED that's over your head, Janet Jackson little thing, Justin Bieber thing, or it attaches to your lapel. They call it a lapel mic, right? I always ask for those because I was doing a pre-convention meeting. So this was 20 years ago. I was doing a pre-convention meeting, and I'm running it, and the meeting planner was nervous, and she had a handheld mic, and she was doing this the whole time. And when I saw that, I said, I'm never going to be in that situation. So I always get a lapel mic. And at this thing in Tampa 2 weeks ago, I was doing a 5 minute, they're called Fast Five, and you talk for 5 minutes straight. And I was going to do the opening to my talk, which I know I have it down, but I was still nervous because I hadn't done it. I've been sitting here at my desk doing it and hadn't even stood up. And I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to drive all the way to Tampa. It's 2 hours there. It's a 4-hour meeting and a 2-hour drive back. But I said, I got to do it. I need to stand up in front of some people I don't even know. So I went, and they gave me a lapel mic, and my legs were just going. But the president films it. And that night I got the film. And yeah, you could not see, it was just Vic. It was just my usual delivery. But my body was saying something different. So yes, I do. Okay, as an HR leader, who do you confide in? Yeah, that is great question. Yeah, when I was at the property level, nobody. Depending on what it was, it might be the GM. It depends on what it is. There are things, and I'm just, again, keeping it real. There are certain things that are going on. I might not even tell the GM, because depending on their maturity level, there are things that I'm doing that are an investigation, for that matter, that I might not tell the GM until I have all of the facts and I'm at a conclusion. Then I'm going to pull the GM in, because inevitably nothing is ever kept a secret. Nothing is. The minute it comes out of your mouth, it's going to go to somebody. It's going, whoever you said. This always happens. You go to, and I've seen it with GMs. You tell the GM, look, okay, we got this thing. And I know it's a confidential thing, but I'll still say, now this is a confidential thing. But it inevitably always happens. You say something at EC meeting and you say, okay, this is confidence just for us. But then one of those EC members or more goes to their confidant and says, hey, look, don't say anything. This is what's going on. And then what do you think happens? The person that they went into their office and they go, hey, look, don't say anything. But this way, next thing you know, it's at the other property. It's at one of your competitors, because somebody's wife worked or somebody's husband worked at such and such, and now it's back at your hotel. That's something that was uttered at EC. I've seen it more than once occur. I've seen it more than once. That's why I don't say anything. So who do I confide in? Rarely anybody at the hotel. Depending on what it is. If it's something for me personally, then there are, folks that might be in the building that are something that's a personal nature, then yeah, I might, whoever I'm that close enough to. But rarely as an HR person, that's one of the other difficulties about HR. It can be a tough role to be in. All right. Thanks for that question. Let's see. Let me look over real quick. That was a great question. Let me see. Do I have anything over on YouTube? I think those were coming in from LinkedIn. How much time do we have? Oh, we're getting close. Let me get through the rest of these questions here. Wow, time is flying. What a great guest I have been so far. You tell me. All right, okay, how about this? Pressure you don't see. pressure you don't see. Now I'm thinking. Now I'm hearing Russell, who was one of my guests. It's like, Victor, where do you get these questions from? Pressure you don't see. This is what I will tell you. People often see. I've been fascinated by this. People often see speaking engagements, the leadership content I'm putting out, books, right? But what they don't always see is the pressure behind trying to, make sure that we're consistently showing up for people while also managing uncertainty ourselves, right? Especially after layoffs, career transitions, being an entrepreneur, rebuilding visibility later in your career, you might find this hard to believe too, but I'm not a spring chicken anymore. I'm not a youngster anymore. And so there's a lot going on, right? And so don't believe everything you see in the media, and especially don't believe everything you see on social media. So I will leave it with that. Remember here's one thing I've learned is that leaders carry emotional weight and they rarely get discussed publicly, right? People are afraid to be vulnerable. So they're not going to be on social media talking about, this tough situation, that tough situation. I just saw something that I was, looking at putting up there. I'm like, no, we're not putting that out there. That's not going to go out there, but we might put something else because I think it is. I got this question. Someone didn't want to ask this in the class, but they asked me after class and said, what about vulnerability? What do you think about vulnerability? And I said, yeah, that's one of the best tools that you can pull out. You just need to make sure you're using it strategically and in the right moments. It's one thing to be vulnerable, but there's times when your teams need you to be confident and be the leader in charge. But there are times when you have to be vulnerable. It's in the book. I talk about a time where I went back. I had apologized to a group of folks. I right away, as soon as I heard, I'm like, oh, we got to fix that right now. So, yes, you got to be vulnerable. Yeah. So here's another thought. And if you don't intentionally manage your own mindset, then that's going to wear you down. It's eventually going to start slowing you up in your leadership. So you got to make sure you have your mind right. That would be the other thing that people don't always see is that you need to make sure that you are intentionally managing your own mindset. You got to make sure you're doing that. A leadership miss. Maybe early in my career, I'm a big proponent of solving the problems for your team. I think that's you are there when they come to you and say, oh, I got this problem. I think early in my career, maybe I solved them too quickly. But I did learn very quickly not to always do that. But I would say when I first started out, I moved in too fast. Let me tell you what I mean. Is if you are the one that's always answering the questions quickly, then they don't learn. And so that doesn't help. That doesn't lead to longer lasting solutions, right? So I used to do that, but then very quickly I changed that to like, well, how would you handle that situation? Tell me what you think and talk about that, particularly for things that are not when you're in the heat of battle, right? When you have the time to do that. So make sure you're picking out those moments to be able to let them learn, coach them up so that they're not always coming to you with questions, that they're able to start problem solving on their own and coming up with solutions on their own and solutions that work. So you have to, when they scrape their knee, you got to say, oh, okay, well, let me help you out with that, right? Put a Band-Aid on it. And how would you not scrape your knee next time, right? Cheering them on. Hey, that's how you learn. Scraping your knee's okay. You got to cheer them on even when they did screw it up. and say, that's all right. That now, what'd you learn from that? Okay, now we're in business. You learned from that. That's great. Keep it moving. Do it again. That's how you learn. That's how you get better. That's how you grow. And then certainly when they get it right, hey, do more of that. I would keep doing. That's what I want you to do, and keep doing more of that. So I started spending more time listening, observing patterns, understanding the emotional dynamics behind that, and doing those things that I just went through. Let's see. Let me see if I can rapid fire a couple of these. People versus operations. People versus operations. I think hospitality leaders often get trapped in believing operations and people are separate conversations, and they are not. Absolutely, they are not. Guest experience is a people strategy. Turnover is an operational issue. We talked about that the other day. Leadership inconsistency eventually becomes a financial issue all day, every day. That is the problem. Inconsistent leadership is costing us money. And the strongest operators I ever worked with understood that, the culture is not that is money. And it drives, when you have a strong culture, that drives execution, that drives getting things done. There's a direct line in all my properties. When I oversaw the Northeast and and at ACE, you could look at the revenue, GOP success tied right to guest success, tied right to your employee relations. If you're the ones I could just go look at. In fact, I did this to prove a point. I went over. I was having a conversation with Brad, the CEO, and we were disagreeing on something. And I pulled up our employee relations, and I didn't have access to this. And that was my point. I wanted to have access to this. I didn't have access to the platform that has all of our guest satisfaction information. And I said, I can tell you right now who's doing well financially right now by looking at the employee relations, because my whole conversation was about going to Athens. And I said, I can tell you right now, look at this property right here who had the best employee relations. And I said, I bet you yes, they did. It's because you can always draw a direct line between how well your employees are doing. You're going to financially do better. It's not pie in the sky. It is the real deal. You can draw a direct line to that. All right. I'll do one more. Let's see. What leaders say publicly versus reality? A lot of organizations talk about people first, leadership publicly, but real people first. Leadership shows up inconsistent. That's been my whole thing. What else did I write over here? Leadership truth learned the hard way. You cannot care about someone's growth, then they care themselves. As leaders, we want to save everyone, fix everything, and hold teams together. But leadership also requires boundaries, accountability, and recognize when someone is unwilling to grow. And there are nuances to that. I wish we had more time. So I think I'm just going to leave it there for now, because I think we could have great debate around that one. I wanted to talk more about that, but we're coming up at the end of the hour. It's 3:00 already, y'all. So listen, thanks so much for making your time to my live. Greatly appreciate it. And you all have a fabulous day. Take care. See you soon. Goodbye.